Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, one and all. Thanks for joining us in the LinkedIn Live series from Top Solutions. Today, our agenda is around all you need to know about AIOps. So, for people who have just dialed in, I would like you to tell us from where you are dialing in because we have over 100 plus registrations that have come for this very important topic called AIOps. So before I get to the guest today, I'm going to explain who are the people, who is our guest today, and what is he going to talk about. So our guest today is Bharat Joshi, who is the co-founder of Vunet Systems, and he has been in this industry for quite a significant number of years and has been an alumnus of Infosys with over 24 years of experience in software architecture, project management, and product management. He graduated from HBTI, Kanpur, with a degree in electrical engineering. So, with no further ado, let me welcome Bharat to the stream. Thank you, Bharat, for joining us in this episode about all about AIOps. I hope you're doing well. I think you have to unmute yourself, I think.
I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Thank you so much, Suresh, for inviting me for this talk. It's good morning, good afternoon, good evening to anyone who have joined on this chat. Really excited to be here. AI ops is something which we have been working for quite some time, and let's get in. Yeah.
Sure. So let's get started off with the why, right? Because as we start with the golden circle of why do we need AIOps? Why existing tools are not enough? And what are the problems that need to be addressed as part of the section, right? So if
Right.
I allow you to kind of share your thoughts around why do we need DevOps, why do we need AIOps, why existing tools are not enough. I'll be more than okay. I'll just add this one if that helps. Yeah,
Yeah, thank you so much, Suresh, for sharing the slide. I wanted to use this as the starting point to discuss about why AI ops, right? So, if you look at right that there has been a digital revolution happening in India or in the world, right? Everything is every enterprise is trying to become a digital first enterprise so that they can deliver their product services digitally to the end customers, right?
right,
As part of that, there is a huge amount of challenges which is coming out for the enterprises in terms of they need to make sure that their application and systems are always available
right,
because any digital first enterprise, if they're delivering their services or products through digital first, application and system availability becomes a first and foremost important point, right?
right,
Second thing is that they need to make sure that their application requests, which their end users are using their platform for, are always successful. There are as minimal number of failures as possible, right?
right,
And the third thing, which basically also becomes important, is how fast your application and systems are able to respond to the user request. So
right,
these three things becomes the foundation of every digital first enterprise, right?
right,
Now see, so far various enterprises has been using monitoring tools, right? And but there is a huge difference which has been happening for last few years. One is that application architecture has been evolving. It has evolved from two tier to three tier to SOA based architecture to microservices to serverless, right?
right,
The monitoring platform or tools which were used earlier to for example for a three tier application is currently not sufficient to monitor this newly evolving architecture, right?
right, right,
Second thing what has happened is because these are digital first enterprises, there are a lot of API interconnection which happens. So
right,
people are basically having applications talk to third-party services using APIs, right?
right,
Or internal, they have divided their larger application into multiple services so that multiple services can talk to each other, right? So there are a
right,
lot of interconnected system which has made the infrastructure quite complex, right?
Correct.
And third one is that because of the cloud coming into the picture, right? A lot of enterprises are either fully on cloud, or they have their own private cloud, or they have in something called hybrid, where they have
Correct.
certain part of the application on premise, certain part is which is there in the cloud, right? So
Correct.
all these things have brought in a huge amount of complexity in the infrastructure, right? And because of that, the current or the previous set of monitoring tools which have been used, which are mostly silo in nature, is not enough, right?
Right.
And the biggest challenge what basically each of these digital enterprises are facing is, because of all this, there is a challenge in terms of bad user experience. So
Correct.
with digital first enterprises, while it is good for the enterprise as well as the end user, but then it becomes nightmare in terms of if your users have bad user experience, it
Correct.
becomes very easy for them to move. So
Correct.
there is a chances that if your users have bad experience, they will churn, they will move
Correct.
to your competitors or some other services, right?
Correct. Correct.
And because of that, it start impacting your top and bottom line
Correct.
and the brand, which is very very critical. So this, the reason why somebody would want something like a next generation of solution to make sure that their application systems are always available, they have lesser number of request failures, they have better response time and so on, is to make sure that their all these challenges are tackled, right?
Excellent.
Now what really happens is, when we are talking about these challenges, then it becomes important to know what are the expectations. If you are creating a solution, what are the
Right.
expectation out of it, right? So people are looking for proactive and faster issue resolution time, the
Correct.
identification, the detection, the identification, and the resolution, right?
Right.
All these things people are looking at more proactive nature. People are looking at root cause analysis, which has been a holy grail sort of thing for IT operations.
Correct.
People always are looking for products which can pinpoint that the problem is in this component or this issue, right? And then
Right.
finally, once the problem has been identified, how fast I can remediate. And that's where the automation and auto remediation is required or expected from the solution. So all these things what we talked about is pushing a case for AIOps.
Correct. Excellent point. And I think you really summarized very well about a digital first enterprise. Now, that comes us to the next important part, because you've explained the why, and also the expectations of the solution, because it's all about the customer experience, right? Because at the end of the day, customer experience co-own our brand. So in terms of pricing, in terms of the competition, so it's a question of people are pretty much ruthless. If I have an unplanned outage and people are focusing on moving to the next competitor, right? So we'll have to be always on toes to keep them
Right,
excited about it, because today we live in a world of attention deficit syndrome. So
correct,
someone's loss is someone's gain. So it's becoming very competitive, right? Now, for our
right.
viewers who are coming in, and I wanted to kind of give you a perspective of people who are dialed in today from different parts. So we have Zagir Hussain, who says, "Can we record the session?" Zagir, this session is recorded as we speak. But to ask live questions, I would encourage you to ask questions for Bharat, and he would answer that. We have got people from Nigeria. Alberto is a regular contact from Africa who is coming there. He's happy to be here. We are having Suresh Itaraman from Chennai, India. So as we start to speak, we'll have more people dial in. But I wanted to ask you the second question is, how do you define AIOps? Because a lot of people are trying to define the word called AIOps. And sometimes it's a pretty misconception of if you ask AIOps to 10 different people, you'll get 10 different answers. So for our viewers
Definitely.
who are on the journey to understand and unravel the myth of AIOps, how do you define AIOps, and how does it play in this context?
Sure. So AI ops actually is a AI driven IT operation, right?
Okay.
This is something which was coined by Gartner somewhere around 2016-17.
Right.
Right. I have a slide. Somehow it did not change.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. So basically, I wanted to give a textbook sort of definition first, so that people know where it is coming from, right? So what was really happening is that Gartner defined this term, thinking that there is a huge amount of innovation which was happening on machine learning and big data, right?
Right.
And on the other side, we talked about that application is evolving. And what people realize is that to be really able to figure out or identify or detect an issue in application or infrastructure, right, you would need data from various components which basically comes together to deliver an application, right?
Right.
So that's where they realize that we would need, let's say, performance data from application, digital experience monitoring, which is real user monitoring, or RAM people call it, or DEM people call it.
Right.
Then the network performance monitoring, because network is the shared media through which these applications are being delivered, and IT infrastructure monitoring, which is usually your server monitoring or database monitoring or storage monitoring and so on, right?
Right.
So what people realize is that if we really want to monitor or observe a specific application completely end to end, it becomes very important to get the health and performance of all touch points. And when we talk about all touch points, all these components which we talk about in an infrastructure has to be monitored. And because these all these components are generating a huge amount of data, it
Right.
becomes apparent that you would need a big data sort of system,
Right.
because the veracity, and the way these data is coming in actually is all characteristics of a big data, right? Because
Right.
application performance data is quite different than a network performance data, right?
Right.
The logs which are getting generated from your systems, or let's say network elements, are quite different than, let's say, IT infrastructure health data, right? Then the DEM basically gives you a completely different type of data, right? So
Yeah.
so this is one part of it, that you have to have a big database platform to ingest all these health and performance data from various things, right?
Right.
Now second thing what happened is that they at the time when they were coming up with this term, right, they also realized that there is a, because it is very difficult to understand this data and bring out insights out of it, right?
Correct.
Then they realized that there is something like ML or AI has to be brought in to make sense out of this data.
Correct.
Because now what we need to do is that we need to go ahead and correlate all this data which is associated with an specific application performance. And then after the correlation, the dependencies and all that thing has to be figured out, so that you can make sense out of data when an issue happens, right? So if you
Yeah.
look at they basically talked about how do I bring in all these data together and use machine learning as well as big data technology to make sense out of this data, so that I
Right.
can remove those silo or human intervention required or human limitation required to provide a solution, right?
Right.
So that is the basis of what AIOps basically became. Now, what really happens is that different enterprises have products on AI ops, and they have their own sort of little bit of definition in terms of what exactly the AI ops is. But at the base level, almost every of these product has big data, machine learning, and data ingestion from different data sources.
Right.
So these are the three or four common things which, if you look at AI ops, any solution for that matter, it generally qualifies for.
Right. That's a good
Uh,
question from. There's one
yeah,
question from Gaurang Sharma. Is it fine to be a machine learning developer than being a ML ops engineer? So, what would be your take on
yeah.
this one? Because we call as AI ops, that is more familiarized with. So, how is that playing around with ML ops?
Yeah, so see, ML ops actually is more like a machine learning operations part of it, while AI ops actually is very specific to IT operations. So
Right.
basically, you are making AI work for the IT operation. So it's a very specific use case. While
Right.
ML ops is more like a platform, or how do you build machine learning models and so on, right?
Right.
So
Right.
these two are quite different from that perspective because of the applications they both have in different levels.
Sure. So the next one as a question, I think we're getting more people logging from different places, from California,
Right.
from India. If you look at you looked at explaining us about how AI works and more about the data part of it. So, how does enterprise try to adopt AI? Right? I mean, this is a lot talked about, but the question is there a method to madness? How do we start in terms of the journey, and then how do we move in that particular aspect so that we can see how they can adopt, and if they want to do, and then how should they plan to do it?
Very true. So, this is something which comes out with almost every enterprise customers we have worked with, right?
Right.
Where we look at in terms of
I've got the
so
use
before
cases
I
on. Yeah.
yeah. Before I go to that, let me just talk about a quick use case bit,
Okay.
so that it becomes much easier to tell you how people will basically be implementing AIOps in their environment, right? Because it is done for a specific use case what you have. Uh, so prior to AIOps, right, people were generally using siloed tools. When I say
Correct.
siloed tools, it really means that people are using server monitoring tools or network monitoring tools or application monitoring tools or database monitoring tools, which are working in silo. They might be from different vendors, or they might be in-house, or like certain set of scripts people have written to monitor things, right?
Right.
The main thing when I say silo is it really means that they do not talk to each other, so they do not share data, and the
Right.
data which they are having does not get correlated at all,
Right.
right? So one of the thing which AIOps aims to solve is bring in all this data in single place, right?
Hmm.
While you can go ahead and implement AIOps with different vendors, different vendors, but there's somebody who is required to correlate this data so that a better results are available. So from
Right.
use case perspective, if you look at AIOps, right, there are these five main use cases which almost everybody always look for, right? One is, how can I proactively provide intelligent alerts which are actionable, right? Which basically points to a problem which is happening. So this
Correct.
is one of the first thing which basically happens. So what it really entails is, it also entails that I should be able to suppress alerts which are something which I should not be looking at. So if you look at any IT operations team, they are struggling with thousands of alerts or hundreds of alerts, right?
Correct.
So what you really need to give them is one single actionable alert, which is something which they should completely immediately take an action on.
Correct.
That requires an ML algorithm to correlate, contextualize, and suppress non-actionable alerts. So that is
Right.
what this proactive intelligent alert means, right? Second thing is that event correlation. So what really happening is that in any IT infrastructure environment, there are a huge number of events which are coming continuously, right? Again, as I said, that you would want only those events to look at which are something important. That is one. Second is, you would also want to correlate and combine certain set of alerts
Right.
because they are pointing to the same issue. So rather than showing maybe 20 events, I will basically combine all of them and say one event, right?
Right.
So that the number of events somebody is looking at become lesser. So that is something which again it can be done using ML, where you can use an unsupervised learning and then say, boss, I will correlate and contextualize and provide a combine a single event, right?
Right.
The third thing, which is I think almost everybody is trying to crack, is the root cause analysis. So we discussed, right, that application architecture is evolving. There are multiple services coming in together to make any request successful or fail, right? And if it fails, figuring out that a particular component or a particular service or a particular metric is what is creating this challenge is what root causes, right? So that people can figure out where the cause of this issue is and then can go ahead and fix it, right? So this is the
Yeah.
root cause analysis. Again, at Vunet, we have developed something called RCA bot, which does exactly this, right?
Yeah.
We'll talk about that. The fourth use case is auto remediation. So one of
Right.
the thing when Gartner defined AIOps is that it takes time to go ahead and build use cases which you would want to implement in your environment. But
Correct.
auto remediation is that low hanging fruit where you can almost immediately, as soon as you build your platform, you can immediately go ahead and build an auto remediation scripts or auto remediation framework, right, which can be used to remediate a specific set of issues or challenges automatically,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And that has worked out quite well because if you see, right, most of the enterprises today either have Ansible, Ceph, Puppet sort of run books, right, or
Correct.
playbooks, where they
Correct.
have already done some part of this work, and some of these things can be reused as part of the AI ops. And
Sure.
finally, whenever you talk about AI or ML, predictive is something which is always expected, right?
Correct.
So here also there are two type of predictive thing people are looking at. One is some sort of capacity prediction, where people say that, okay, can you tell me what sort of infrastructure I should have if a number of users or number of requests or number of transactions coming to my application become 2x or 5x, right?
Right.
So this is one sort of thing. Second set of predictive is that can you tell me when or what time or when it basically my current set of metrics may go bad, right? So you have already collected a huge amount of data, and by doing your own ML modeling, right, you can go ahead and start predicting some of those things. So for
Right.
example, failures, right? There could be a seasonality to failures. For
Correct.
example, we have seen in certain cases, right, that the transactions, let's say UPI transaction or mobile banking transactions, right, would basically start failing, let's say at 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock, because there is a
Mhm.
huge rush during that time. People go
Correct.
for snacks or people go for restaurant and so on, right? And this is something which will show up in your trend charts or time series data, and then you will be able to predict that, okay, next same day next week maybe such a problem will happen, right? So these are
Sure.
the a few use cases which AIOps people are generally using it
Excellent. So let's talk about ViewNet, and you are into the space of developing a solution for AIOps. So I wanted
for.
to
Right,
kind of get you, the viewers, about how your ViewNet platform is kind of structured, and what does the whole journey map look like? Because
right,
frankly, Bharat, we are into helping building site reliability engineers, and as we start to look at from reactive, which was more incident management, a lot of things have happened towards event correlation to an extent. Now we moved on to observability and AOps. So for me, this is a very important topic that I get asked every time I do a workshop with my clients.
right,
And for me, I think you've also been part of figured out in the NASCOM report. But give us a
right,
sense of where is the um, industry heading to, and even if people are ready in that particular journey, because sometimes I think that we are far ahead on the curve. In reality,
correct,
a lot of people are still struggling with monitoring, forget about observability and AOps at the second level. So how is your,
right.
give us a little bit of a sense of the industry and what is VNet doing in that particular journey?
Definitely. So I think, see, AI ops actually is still in the hype curve. If you look at Gartner thing, right, they still
Correct.
do not have a magic quadrant for AI ops. They are still thinking that maybe it is in hype curve and then it will come down and then become steady, right? But there are a lot of enterprises who basically have taken up AI ops journey, and some of them have taken it up with ViewNet, right? And one of the thing what we realize is that there are different type of different verticals right out there, which are at different levels of their tech enablement within their IT team, right?
Correct.
And that also has been seen in the way they are approaching their AI journey, right?
Correct.
Because if you look at the NASACOM report, right, they are saying that almost 35%, one in three enterprises looking or thinking about implementing AI ops in their enterprise, right? The challenge, what basically really happens is that they really need to identify the specific use case, specific application infrastructure where they would want to start this AI ops journey, right?
Right.
Because again, it is not going to be very easy and like, okay, I decided something and I will start seeing results in a week or a
Sure.
month, right? It does take time because there are a lot of fine tuning, there are a lot of feedback which has to be given to make this whole algorithm based thing more accurate and more responsive over time.
Right.
So usually any enterprise, if you look at, they go through these four different states, what we call it. They always start reactive because they most of the time they might already be having tools, maybe
Right.
silo in nature, but they would already be having tools which give them sort of threshold based alerts or some ways that okay there is a problem, right? So people generally start from there. And one of the thing what we generally suggest is that let's start with unifying your IT operations data into a big data platform first, because
Right.
that's the starting point. Once you do that, at least your data part is taken care, right?
Correct.
Next thing, basically, what happens is that you start building sort of correlation logics, because now we have started receiving data from five different data sources like APM, server monitoring, network monitoring, database monitoring, storage monitoring. All these data is coming in single place, so you can start building some sort of correlation
Right.
that if an application is being delivered using, let's say, three servers, two web servers, or one database, all these things now can be correlated. And if any event is happening, rather than sending 7, 10, 20 events, you can actually correlate all of them and say that there is one event, right? So there, what really happens is that you are reducing your IT team's stress in terms
Correct.
of how many events they do. The second thing what happens is that you start using some sort of dynamic baselining for your alerts, so it becomes a lot more proactive.
Correct.
So what really you are doing with that is that when the problems start happening at that time, so we generally call it early warning signals. Basically
Correct.
it tells you that okay there is a problem which is going to happen now, right?
Correct.
So that is where the proactive bit comes. And then once you have make these things work, now is the time where you know that your issues are getting reported correctly, which are getting actionized, and you go ahead and then create an automation framework where things which you are taking care by either, let's say, restarting a service or changing database or killing long running queries or and things like that, right? Which is something which is quite standard in nature. All those things can be built as an automation framework scripts, and then it is easier to invoke those scripts whenever such problems happen, right?
Right.
And that's where the automation bit come. And once we have made this whole thing work quite well, that's when you start focusing on the prediction bit, because by that time you would also have seen, let's say, 3 months data, so some sort of seasonality would have come, some sort
Right.
of history you would have got, right? And then you can go ahead and start building your predictive analytics sort of thing, which can give you capacity prediction or specific metric prediction, failure predictions, and so on,
Right.
right?
So one
So
question
these
on
are
this
the
one.
usual. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry. One question on this one was, do you need to have a data scientist to help you in this particular journey? Because sometimes when you talk about big data and some of these elements to run through it, people get to a notion, oh, I need to hire a data scientist. So what is the kind of skill set you need to have from a particularly from an enterprise that is starting to explore on the option of AIOps in terms of how they manage their existing environment?
Yeah, no, very, very, very valid question, very fair question, Suresh. And thanks for pointing this out, because this is one of the other thing which I believe our enterprise customers needs to be very clear about, right? See, one part of the AI ops is that because this is for IT operations, so sort of data is quite fixed. If you
Correct.
look at standard infrastructure components like server or network or database, right, their performance metrics remains the same. I mean,
Correct.
whichever way you look at it, right? So that way, lot of things has been made plug and play.
Correct.
So when the product is given, let's say if somebody is using Vunet, part of this is already figured out that what is the data, what is the field, and what sort of correlation and so on has already been figured out. So the customer does not need to worry about, okay, I need somebody who understand this well, and then that guy can only do it. So that
Right.
part is sort of not required, because these are quite standard data sets.
Hmm. Sure, sure. Awesome. So let's get into the next part as you start to go through it, right? So how do you look at your AOps platform? What are the key tenets that you think will be needed for an enterprise to adopt to this one? Particularly I have a lot of my clients in financial services, right? So there's a huge critical focus on Swift transactions, NEFT transactions,
Yes,
RTGS transactions, and sometime a nightmare, right? Because one service virtualization doesn't work, my API call doesn't work, my OTP doesn't come in, and it's just unbelievable, right, in terms of the user experience.
very true.
So how do you
Yeah,
look at this holistic AIOps platforms in terms of the
right.
level of layers that could make meaningful user experience at the end of the day?
So, Suresh, just to give you a quick background on Vunet thing, and then I think this slide will also be able to explain things, why what we are doing different and how the whole AI of story is, right? So one of the thing is that early on, even before AI ops came in picture in 2017 timeframe, uh, we had been talking to a lot of IT heads or CIOs and so on, and one of the perennial problem which was keep coming out was that they have 10 to 15 tools, mostly silo in nature.
Hmm.
And then whenever they have a challenge, they basically get some 20 people on a call or a bridge call, and then everybody fights. Everybody says, no, no, problem is not in their domain. And then
Correct.
after 5 hours or a day or something, somebody figures out, oh, that thing was failing there, and that's why this whole problem is happening, right? So one of the things they were trying to tell us is that is it not possible that rather than I am asking these 15 people to do figure out things themselves, uh, there is a system which basically ingests all this data and tell us what exactly the problem is. And that's
Correct.
where we started with this unified visibility, where we brought in this data together and did this correlation and all, right?
Sure.
And uh, luckily for us, we always thought that okay, because we are trying to do this unification, we would definitely need something like big data platform. So we actually choose a NoSQL database as our backend, right?
Sure.
And when Gartner came out in 2017, we were like very, very close to the architecture they were talking about for AIOps in terms of we be able to get network performance data, infrastructure performance data, application performance data into a single place. And then one thing which we added on top of it was the business journey part,
Right.
which AIOps platform doesn't talk about. But we realized that for any user interaction, it is important that our customers, right, our IT ops folks, have a view into terms of how these business journeys are performing. Because
Correct.
otherwise, everybody start looking at this data in silo, and
Correct.
maybe application or service one is working fine, but service two, service three, which this service uses, is having a challenge, right?
Correct.
So until you really get a full journey view in terms of how your requests and transactions are flowing through, it does not give you the right information. And
Sure.
then the most important thing in all this, are like what we talked about in the early on, right? How do you stitch all this data together to represent how your end users user experience is,
Correct.
because that is the key for any digital first enterprise today.
Correct.
And that is what we provided in terms of a ML based KPI called user experience index, which was like a
Hmm.
sensex giving a number between 0 to 10 and give you a view how your end user experience is based on all these important metrics. All these metrics which we are collecting, all this gets bubbled up using ML to give you that view. So this is how the Vunet AF platform is, where we collect all this data, bring it, do our magic in the middle, and then use that for alerting, dashboarding, and reporting, and so on.
Right. So one question would be, if I have a different user journey for a particular product line, so I can still build the different business journey in your uh, above the application
Yes.
layer, right? Because I might have
Yes. Yes.
a particular customer who's dealing in let's say in African continent. There is another person, because the rules are different, the laws are different, the transactions are different. So I can have
Right.
three different pathways in terms of customer journey segment that I can just put it as a rule that could then process in that direction to lead to that front. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very true. See, the thing is that these journeys, if you look at right, any digital first enterprise applications which are being accessed by end users, right, they would be doing certain transactions,
Correct.
sending certain requests, and that each request may go through 10, 15, 20 services at the back end, right?
Correct.
And they may be different. So, for example, you have, let's say, uh, an e-commerce app where you are just selecting something to the cart. So this will take a different path in your application or services. And if
Correct.
you are, let's say, checking out, that will take a different path. So each
Correct.
of these journeys has to be seen in how the user is interacting with your application, rather
Right.
than just in silo in nature. That's where when we talk about business journey observability, that is what we really mean, that you have to have an end-to-end view.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the use cases, because I think now a lot of people here are viewing, is there a use case that we can bring about in the thing? So I'm going to kind of bring you into the
Definitely.
element and
Yes.
add your system and data to be in place. So for our viewers, give us a little bit of a demo of how ViewNet happens and what is the kind of use case that you can relate to, so that we
Yeah.
can get a feeler of the whole map in the journey.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So see, this is very important, because we talked about why AI ops. We also talked about what is AI ops, and then we also talked about what sort of use cases it has. I thought it will be very useful for the viewers, right, if we can demonstrate at least one use case in terms of how the AI ops actually is implemented and how it really helps, right?
Right.
So one of the thing which I wanted to showcase was that we basically have this unified transaction map, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as you see, right, there are multiple services applications come together to make, let's say, a IBMB app. IBMB is nothing but internet banking, mobile banking application, right?
Right.
And most of the banking enterprise today would have one such app, right? And
Right.
this basically has various channels or connections to different other services. It also has a DB, which is basically its own Oracle DB, and then it also talks to core banking system, which has its own deep database. It also, the request comes through, let's say, UPI. It also comes through API gateway, and it also comes through a mobile IBMB app user, right? So multiple channels, multiple services involved. And one of the thing which we talked about as part of AI ops, right, that you have to collect data in terms of application performance, infrastructure metrics, network metrics, and so on, right? So we basically are collecting data from all. So UPI web is a web server, and then database is an infrastructure side of thing. IBMB app, which basically have application, right? It's an application where we have how many percentage of transaction successful, what is the turnaround time, what is the failures, and technical decline, and the number of alerts which are there, right? So all this thing has been brought together in a single view. So this is
Right.
basically what we call a business journey, end-to-end business journey view. This is how basically it looks like. And then for each of the component which are there as part of this application delivery, we go ahead and put their corresponding performance data on top of it, right? So this is what, if you look at Oracle DB, it's basically give you buffer cache hit ratio, long running query count, and PGA ratio, what these values are, right? Now, for example, if this all these things are working fine, right,
Mm-hmm.
then there is no challenge. Everything is
Right.
looking pretty good, right? Everything is looking green,
Right.
and there doesn't seems to be having any issue there, right?
Mm.
But if let's say there is a problem where our database, which is like IBMB database, right,
Mm-hmm.
it start having some sort of long running queries, right?
Right.
So there's basically I'm basically refreshing this. So let's say there is a long running query issue happens. What will
Right.
happen is, first this database will become red, and then the IBMB app will become red, because IBMB app is using this IBMB database, right? So
Right.
let me just refresh it. There is a long running query thing I
Yeah.
have put,
You're able to see
and
that
if
at
you
the
see
bottom.
that,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so it is basically has become red. And if you look at, right, there is still no alert which has happened, but long running query count has started increasing. So there is
Correct.
some problem with the database which has started happening. But if you look at IBMB alert, there is still no alerts, right? Let
Correct.
me refresh it. And
And
So that,
for a user, the user is able to see it on the pictorial visual representation that something is wrong,
right,
so that they can have a view of
correct.
it. Yeah.
Correct, correct, correct. So what really happens is here when the IBMB app started having challenges, right, in terms of TAT, in terms of technical decline. So if you look at right this technical decline has becoming orange, right? As soon as it becomes red, it will generate an alert, right? Because
Right.
now your users has started getting impacted, right?
Correct.
At that time, an alert has got generated. If you look at it, IBMB alert has got generated. Correct. If I
Mm,
click on this, it will take me to the alert page, right, which will show me what sort of alert it has generated, right.
mm,
So this is the IBMB RCA page. If you look at, right, and here we will be able to see what sort of alert got generated, correct, and
mm,
then it will also give you a view in terms of is there any auto remediation job which is supposed to happen has started happening, right.
mm,
So if you look at here, right, the database wait time has started happening now,
mm,
right? And then Oracle long running queries also started coming in. If you
mm.
look at these two at the end, right?
Right.
Now, if I refresh, what will happen is it will run a auto remediation script. So if you see here, auto remediation job status has started. It is saying it is still pending. So it is trying to do something at the back end to clear those long running queries,
Correct.
right? So that the database can function correctly and so that the IBMB request which is coming from the end user can function or can get processed correctly, right?
Correct.
So if I refresh it again, if you see in a minute, in a second, actually, it as soon as the alert gets triggered, immediately it basically triggers the auto remediation script, which is associated with it, right? And then so I if I can show you, just give me a second. It will
And
once
it
it
is
gets
also,
refreshed,
I also
yeah,
see that on the left hand side, the tech decline is increasing, right? It was
is
about
increasing.
8.9 to start with. So what does that signify? Is it the you're
So
talking about technical debt on this case, or how is that technical
yeah, so
decline?
what really is happening is that whatever user requests are coming to IBMB app now, all of them are getting declined because of the DB timeout,
Right.
right?
Right.
So if you see here, there is a IBMB financial TDs, right? That has started coming in as an alert, correct?
Mhm.
And these are all correlated alerts. If you see this, all these things happened when this started, right?
Right.
So what will happen now is that as soon as see now it is saying that the auto remediation job status is running now for this particular thing. So we
Right.
went all the way till 10.12% technical decline, and if you see below IBMB overall tech trend, it went all the way up, then it started going down. So this is the
Mm.
time. If you look at 2142,
Yeah.
2141, this script ran,
Right.
right? And then it basically cleared that thing. And now if you see
Long
tech decline
long
has
query.
started
The long
reducing.
query that was hanging around, it is
Yes,
actually did the one, and that's why now the tech decline is going to orange from red. So it's probably getting
correct.
improvised towards restoration.
Right, right. So this is what happens. And if I can show you uh, the uh, the chart which we started with, right? Now that
Correct.
would have become green again.
Hmm.
So it will become green now here as soon as, so there are five alerts which got generated during this time, and
Right.
then in few seconds uh, everything will become green once the alerts gets cleared, right? So this is the auto remediation bit, right,
Correct.
where we started with a problem. Here the problem actually the problem is technical declines, because that is
Correct.
what our lead indicator that actually tells that there is a problem with the application. But the
Correct.
technical decline root cause is long running query,
Correct.
right? So when the technical decline alerts get generated, it actually go ahead and figure out that there is a long running query as the count is increased, and that's where it goes ahead and clear those long running queries so
Hmm.
that it can automatically take care of the challenge.
Right.
So that is what basically is happening.
Right.
So
So I had a couple
let's
of
see.
questions. I had a
Yeah,
couple of questions, Bharat. Now, in
sure.
these cases, you have had your previous experience of long running query, and that's why it's probably giving you some heads up, right? So, is that when you are configuring in your system, you're expecting some usual suspects? Long running query could be one. It could be some transactional failures that could happen. So, is
Right.
there a kind of a prerequisite of symptoms or things that it could track, or we should feed in more information as we start to get into data?
So we discussed, right, that these are all standard infrastructure components. So what we
Correct.
have done is we have identified certain golden signals, which is
Hmm.
nothing but metrics, right, or
Correct.
telemetry metrics, which are the whose value, right, these metrics value represents the health and performance of a given component.
Right.
So, for example, for server, if you look at server, how do you figure out server performance is good or bad? Looking at, let's say, CPU utilization metric or memory utilization metric or disk utilization metric, right?
Hmm.
Any of these metrics going bad means that there is a problem with the server.
Hmm.
Similarly, database has like buffer cache ratio, long running queries, deadlock. So we have identified these specific golden signals,
Right.
right? And that is what represents the health and performance of a given component. And
Sure.
that is what is used as input to these algorithms or rules or alerts and so on.
Sure. Yeah. And there's a
Okay. So,
one
hmm.
question from Gaurang Sharma. You mentioned network monitoring tools. Is it somehow related to telecom networking tools? If yes, then how AOps solves different telecom domain use cases? Any high level view of this one?
Yeah. So Gaurang, when I say network monitoring tool, I was referring to product like NMS or NPMD, which are used to monitor data center network, branch network. Telecommunication has its own set of network, right? Different type of network. But when I say it was more about data sort of network, right?
Sure.
Where there is a router used, or there is a switch used, or there is a firewall use, and so on. So
Sure.
that is where the network monitoring tool comes from. But
Right.
telecom, again, whatever network is being used as the backhaul, that network monitoring definitely there is a use case there.
Sure. And I think for viewers, as you start listening, if you have any questions, I know that we have more 15 minutes to go to answer some of these questions. So keep posting your questions as you come over to this to get this one done. So yeah, go ahead, Bharat, on the next steps of how you see this AOps taking this whole journey. Now let's take a little bit of a step back and ask, if I ask you, you're dealing with a lot of clients in the journey of their maturity around. How many of you think, and I see this already green with that long query has been done. Now the question
Yeah,
is, how
yeah.
many of the companies are ready today to adopt to that level of proactive or predictiveness that you think about, right? Because while you have these solutions very robust enough, it is also about, it's not a child's play, right? We need to understand if they are adequately competent to do that. So what is your take on the adoption in terms of the client maturity and basically on the observability space where they see the
Right.
value of AIOps in place?
No, I think, see, we have our customers primarily focus on the BFSI. So
Hmm.
BFSI vertical, we have found people to be really uh, very interested in these new technologies which can help them. Because
Right.
see, if you look at it, right, because they are the first digital first enterprise. If you look at it,
Correct.
because that is in payments for that, for example, right, is the first sort of highly scaled digital application, if you look at it
Sure.
from that perspective, right? So they are very, very interested, and they have the know-hows now. They understand that my application architecture is evolving. I may
Right.
not be able to use a siloed tool or a earlier base tool to monitor the similar new generation of applications, right?
Sure.
And then the other thing what is happening is they still have certain legacy sort of application which has been developed some time back, and it
Right.
is, they cannot shut it off just like that, right? So
Right.
there is a mix of the legacy SOA based or three-tier based architecture based applications. Then there are microservices coming in, and then there are also serverless or function based applications coming in, right? So bringing in all these things together in a single infrastructure is making things very very complex for them.
Sure.
So and at the same time, the user expectation is, like as we discussed, right, that people are becoming impatient. They want things to go through every time without fail. They want the services and application to be always available. So they are definitely looking for solutions like AIOps to help them becoming more proactive, detect issues faster. If they are able to detect issues faster, they also want AI ops to help them identify which component and which place, or what is the root cause for that, so that they can fix it faster. So they
Sure.
want to reduce this overall MTTD, MTTI, MTTR, these three terms which most of the people usually use, right, to as minimal as possible.
Sure.
And that is where this automation, whatever we just saw, becomes very important. You just think about this, like whatever we saw just 5 minutes back, right? Everything happened in a minute. But
Right.
just think about an alert going, somebody looking at it, somebody figuring out, okay, what has gone wrong, and then figuring out, okay, I have looked at the application, technical decline is increasing, but he
Sure.
doesn't have a clue this is happening because of a DB problem, right? And
Correct.
all these things have come together, and then now we are automated that, okay, you clear the problem also,
Correct.
right? And
Excellent.
everything happened within less than a minute, right?
Excellent.
I think 1 second that thing
Sure.
happened. So that is
Excellent.
the requirement they are going with. Yeah.
Sure. So, for us as top solutions, Bharat, one of the things we are into the space is around AOps. We are practitioners in site reliability engineering. We're doing
Mhm.
observability, and we're also launching a course on AOps Foundation, right, with the
Yeah.
DevOps Institute. And thanks for your involvement as well. We are doing that session on Saturday and Sunday. So, for viewers
Right.
who are interested to know more about the AOps Foundation, one of the things I expect people to understand and get this one familiarized is to go through the AOps Foundation training session, which is from People Cert, where the DevOps Institute is now a company of People Cert. We're doing a 2 days workshop on July 29 and 30th. This would be on the APJ, Middle East and African time zone to start with. We are also going to be launching in August sometime for the US batch of AIOps Foundation. I also want people to understand the aspect of what do you cover under this one, because it's a question that we get normally asked in terms of
Right.
what are the course materials and stuff. So one of the things I we see here is understanding about whatever you talked about AOps, basic key principles within AOps, part of it, understanding the general concepts of big data, artificial intelligence, like how they all correlate with each other, relationship between AOps, MLOps, understanding effectiveness of AOps deployment, possible benefits, quantifying implementation, and applying use cases of doing that, right? And what is also great to hear from is as Bharat was talking about, we are also going to do a demo, right, of a practical use case of not just talking about AOps from a theoretical perspective, but how can we apply some of these stuff in real world, right? Because I know some people um, have butterflies in their stomach when they talk about AOps. So for viewers, Bharat, uh, can you give us a little bit understanding of what they can expect in that 1 hour demo that you plan to do on Saturday? For people who
Right.
are attending the AOps Foundation? What will they stand to gain from the Vunet
Right.
platform?
Right. So, see, there are two things which I would be focusing on. One is ability to bring in data from all these different data sources which we talked about, right?
Right,
We'll be able to show how we are bringing in this data, obviously push, pull, agent, agentless, all sort of methods, right? Then second thing is I want to demonstrate our RCA bot, which I talked about, right? That
right.
which basically provide a root cause for a given incident. So
Hmm.
using ML. right? So there are ML algorithms which basically has been written by our data science team, who has been very closely working with IIT Madras professors in developing some of these algorithms, right? So we will demonstrate that how you configure sort of RCA bot, and
Right.
then how it figures out when an incident is happening. It automatically does that, and then it also tells you that out of this hundreds of metrics or hundreds of components which you are monitoring, which component, which metric, and what could be the root cause, right?
Sure.
And then there are ways and means, because any ML algorithm, if you look at, right, does not improve until you give it feedback, right?
Correct.
So we also allow user to tell us, okay, maybe what we have given is not fully right. So you tell us that, okay, what we have missed, or was there anything else which you would want it to consider, right?
Sure.
So those
Yeah.
sort of feedbacks it can give, which makes the algorithm more robust and more accurate, right?
Excellent.
And then we will show you that if you have given such an input there, right, how the next time a similar incident comes, it considers that input and give you a better outcome, better
Excellent.
root cause. So
Okay,
those sort
excellent.
of
So
things we will showcase. Yeah.
excellent. So one of the things, so for people who are interested to know more about AOps, as we normally say, if you're a site reliability engineer, because a lot of people who are attending this session, like Shyam, Pratibhuti Rao, a lot of people are SRE practitioners. So they did with top solutions, and I think this whole world is shifting from monitoring to observability, and then also on AOps. So Bharat, could you girls also give a viewers a view of your observability platform, because I know that you're launching web, because a lot of people would be interested to experiment something on observability platform. So can you give
Right.
a little bit of a list on that?
Sure. So one thing what we realize, Suresh, is that it is much needed to give a good hands-on experience to people,
Correct.
because people want to experience things. People want to feel things, that okay, if I use this product, what do I really get? How do I use the data the way it is being represented in the product for my use cases? And for that, we have come up with the observability experience centers, right? And we have in a planned launch for maybe a couple of them, like infrastructure observability experience center, or because we are focusing BFSI, we will be focusing more on like banking application specific observability experience center. How do you provide observability for a specific application like IBMP, or
Sure.
lending, or
Yeah.
loan applications, right?
Correct.
So because we want to provide this view, a domain centric view to our end users, the enterprise customers, right? That they will be able to use a product like ours to identify, again the same thing, right, that they want to figure out the problem faster, they want to
Correct.
figure out the root cause faster, they should be able to remediate it. So all these three things coming in single place.
Sure. Excellent. So our final question is for viewers. What is your bet on AOps? I know that Vunet is heavily invested on AOps and in this journey. But where do you see the future? And is there kind of jobs? Because at one end, Bharat, we are all talking about generative AI. Will it still keep our jobs intact, or will be out of jobs? So how is this dealing with it? Is it going to make my site reliability engineers more efficient with AOps? Are we going to get rid of people? So that's a bigger question that we want to ask you as an
So
expert on this
see,
space.
so I would see that AI ops is definitely the thing which is going to happen,
Right.
right? Generative AI is again another form of AI, if you look at it, which is going to aid a lot in IT operations. So we are working on some of the things which I may not be able to disclose here now,
Sure.
but we are working on something which will basically change the way people interact with these IT operations products.
Hmm.
That's some of the work which we are doing.
Right.
Having said that, see, I generally believe that while AI will always be there, NI, which I call it like natural intelligence or human intelligence, will always be required. How much ever AI we have, because there is
Right.
somebody required to really use that AI for their own advantage.
Excellent. So it's a basically a great news for us to hear that it's human intelligence or natural incidents to do that. There's a lot of feedback
Yeah.
coming on from it. Alberto Suji says that great session. Well done, Bharat and Suresh for hosting. Thank you so much, Alberto. So please do
Thank you.
provide us your feedback. And if you're interested to know more about AIOps and the upcoming foundation course, please put it on the comment sections. We will get back to you because there's a lot happening around and nobody wants to leave AIOps. So thank you so much, Bharat, for your inspiring session today to clarify our viewers on the why, how, and also a practical demo of doing that. We are indeed great to participate and as a partner with Vunet Systems. Top Solutions is onto the SRE observability AOps space, and it's a great combination to partner with Vunet Systems where they are the market leaders as part of AOps is concerned, and with the thought leadership that they have. I did share your report on NASCOM to our viewers. There's a lot of people who have gone through that report. And I think it's exciting times. So we will also keep all of you notified about the observability experience platform. It's a great
Definitely.
trial option where you can go there and experience. So thank you so much, Bharat, for doing this, and I look forward to working with you closely.
Thank you so much, Suresh. Really appreciate this invite. Was very, very happy to do this. Thank you so much.
Excellent. And we have Gautam. Thanks, Gautam, for joining. A lot of people I'm meeting now who have not been able to meet for a long period of time. So I want to give a shout out to all the people who just came over: Zakir Hussain, Alberto, Suresh Itaraman, Shyam from Dallas. We had Gaurang Sharma. We had Trinyana Sambandam Rajendran from India. We had IC Mall from California. California people, is pretty early for them, quite early for them at 9:30, 9 o'clock. We had Nitin Agarwal coming from Bangalore. Thanks for coming. We had thing, and I'll share you also, Gautam, on the share the report, the NASCOM report, which is a very useful data that has been published about the Indian stats of it, and I will share it again with people. Right. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Keep watching us on the channels, and if you have any questions that you would like us to answer, we'll be more than happy to take you. So I will see you in the next 2 weeks' time in the next episode of LinkedIn Live. Until then, stay safe and keep talking about AIOps because that is going to be the magic wand. Thank you so much, Bharat.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.